Oklahoma. This commenter either tapped the paper airplane too fast or was trying to cite Oklahoma as a Native American counterexample to my point that the U.S. designated territories as incorporated and therefore bound for statehood only once their population was white enough. Never mind that the original video was about islands, which Oklahoma definitively isn't, it's an even clearer example. The insular cases were like a speed run of recreating the reservation system across the ocean, but without the need for any messy treaties to break, or any pretense of having respected the sovereignty of the colonized. Remember, the Supreme Court created the unincorporated territory doctrine in 1901 specifically to exclude the people of the Philippines, Guam, Puerto Rico, and American Samoa from any full constitutional rights. Meanwhile, on the mainland, here's my great-great-great-grandfather Emsley Marsh as one of the 59,000 white settlers present for the first territorial census of Oklahoma in 1890, most of which had been separated from unorganized Indian Territory, incorporated as Oklahoma Territory, and set on a path to statehood that year specifically because President Harrison had given an official federal blessing to the land run of 1889. The previous year. In that short time period, the Sooners, combined with cattlemen in the long-since ethnically cleansed no-man's land panhandle where my ancestor lived, became more than 6 times the combined native population in this western portion of today's Oklahoma, for about 83%. The eastern portion, remaining under the name Indian Territory, was barely different. It was 61% white by 1890 and 79% by 1907 statehood. Despite this, white people in this eastern portion generally favored merger with the now more populous and 94% white Oklahoma Territory, rather than accepting the native-backed proposal for a state of Sequoia, even though they'd have wind up dominating that too. In any case, Theodore Roosevelt and the Republicans weren't going to accept 2 new southern, probably Democratic states, and so unified Oklahoma was born. He'd wanted to do the same to Hispanic-majority New Mexico by merging it with Arizona. New Mexico could have been this commenter's better counterexample in theory, except that unincorporated wasn't a legal option that any legal mind came up with in 1850, and even though Mexican citizens annexed after the Mexican-American War had been granted U.S. citizenship and its implied legal whiteness by international treaty, that didn't create social equality, or stop New Mexican statehood from being delayed for 62 years after California's. This has been a reminder that although there's nothing inherently wrong with any federal government being the voluntary creation of its smaller, genuine units, the units of the current U.S., its specific states, are not of divine origin. The 50 states are arbitrary polygons created by people and could be created differently. We don't need to pretend that the United States' internal borders were ordained by God. They're a product of politics, specifically kings granting land theft monopolies to their war buddies and their creditors, Congresses looking to admit land up to whatever random survey meridian had enough white people they thought would give them a partisan advantage, and then for the non-states, imperialists wanting to keep true colonies and military occupations forever in limbo by declaring the Constitution doesn't follow the flag.